Tough to believe Domino's has never had stuffed crust pizza until now, right? Well, it's here. And it's delicious. It's stuffed with melty cheese, baked with melty cheese, and sprinkled with garlic seasoning and real Parmesan. Yep, that's even more cheese. Order Domino's new Parmesan stuffed crust pizza for $10.99 each when you mix and match 2 or more items. Price is higher for some locations. You must ask for this limited time offer. Prices, participation, delivery area, and charges may vary. Delivery orders subject to local store's delivery charge, 2-item minimum. For additional terms and conditions, visit Domino's.com.
Sasha hated sand, the way it stuck to things for weeks. So when Maddie shared a surf trip on Expedia Trip Planner, he hesitated. Then he added a hotel with a cliffside pool to the plan. And they both spent the week in the water. You were made to follow your whims. We were made to help find a place on the beach with a pool and a waterfall and a soaking tub and, of course, a great shower. Expedia. Made to travel.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. Now, this week I have outstanding episodes, and I want to make sure that you are subscribed because I have 2 stories this week about unsolved cases. So if you're someone that enjoys true crime documentaries and podcasts, this is something that you're going to want to share with others. I have spent years covering unsolved cases, each one tragic, each one unique, but some of those stories stay with you in a different way. I still remember the first time I heard about Jodi Huisentruit's disappearance and the sense that this was a case that would never let go. On a quiet summer morning in Mason City, Iowa, a small Midwestern town surrounded by cornfields and rooted in a deep sense of community, something unimaginable happened. Jodi Huisentruit, a 27-year-old morning news anchor at KIM-TV, failed to show up for her shift. Knowing for her bright smile, relentless ambition, and love of storytelling, Jodi was the kind of anchor who lit up the screen. On June 27, 1995, she was expected to be on air by 6 o'clock a.m. When she didn't arrive, a producer called her at home. Jodi answered, saying she had overslept and was heading in, but she never made it. Later that morning, police found her red Mazda Miata still parked outside her apartment. Her shoes, hairspray, earrings, and car keys were scattered on the ground. Drag marks suggested a struggle. A neighbor reported hearing a scream around 4:30 a.m., and there were no signs of forced entry, only the eerie silence of a young woman gone without a trace. The disappearance rocked Mason City, where Jodi had become a familiar and beloved presence in living rooms across the region. Investigators chased early leads. A friend named John, nearly 20 years her senior, who had hosted a party in her honor just days before she vanished. And he also had a boat that he named after her. A convicted serial rapist named Tony, who was living in the area at the time. And then whispers of a stalker, someone who may have been watching her every move. But no arrests were ever made, no body was found. And nearly 30 years later, the question remains, what happened to Jodi Huisentruit? In this episode, I'm joined by investigative journalist and filmmaker Maria Oz, whose documentary Her Last Broadcast, The Abduction of Jodi Huisentruit, takes an unflinching look at this chilling mystery. Through years of research, exclusive interviews, and never-before-seen footage, Maria re-examines the case from every angle, exploring the flawed investigation, the media's role, and the haunting possibility that someone still knows the truth. This is more than a story about a missing person. It's about how a life can be stolen in an instant, and how a community, a newsroom, and a nation have refused to forget. Here is my interview with Maria. Maria, this case has stayed rent-free in my head. I don't even know how long, probably from the very beginning. So imagine my joy that I get to talk to you about this today. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I have been living and breathing this case for a very long time as well. And, I'm happy to hear that you want to give it a little bit of coverage. So that's great.
Let's go from the beginning. How did you first hear about this case?
Yeah, the first time I heard about this case, I was actually in college. I was taking some broadcast journalism classes, which was my major. And we talked about this case because, I mean, it's everybody's worst fear, right? At least women going into that field. And so, this was 1995. It was kind of a different time in news then, right? News has changed a lot in the last 30 years, but it's a little scary. And, I think one of the things that, and we can talk about the case more, but one of the reasons I think it resonates with people a lot is because every woman knows this feeling of going outside, being alone. It's dark. It's got to have your keys ready or something, right? Because there's that feeling that something could happen. There could be that stranger in the night. And that is kind of what this case is about.
So immediately when I start watching this series, I have to throw out everything that I've ever believed. And I am guilty of being one of those people that has gone down several rabbit holes over the years. And what I love about this is from the very beginning, you point out so many inconsistencies in earlier reports. So truly you need to watch this docuseries because if you've followed this case, you will soon realize there is a lot of information that was incorrect over the years, and there are other players, moving parts of this story. So if you could just sort of walk through maybe some of what have been inconsistencies to this story and what we do know about maybe her last day.
Yeah, I can walk you through a little bit of that. I mean, I think the first thing I would say is it's easy to think of a case that's gone on for 30 years as being a cold case, right? But it really isn't a cold case. This is one that's been very actively worked by the Mason City Police for a very long time. And this documentary series really features a lot of the boots on the ground work that they're doing present day, looking into some new persons of interest, right? But as for the case itself, I mean, we know that June 27th, 1995, Jodi, who was the morning show anchor at KIMT TV in Mason City, Iowa, was running late for work. Her producer called her, hey, you're late. Are you coming in? She said, I'll be right there. That was about 4:10 a.m. She never showed up. Her producer had to go on the air. This is a small station, right? It's just the two of them essentially in the morning, plus the camera guys, right? Had to go on the air in her place, came out and, before she went on the air, told a floor director, I think it was, hey, somebody's got to reach out to the police here. They went out. She never made it in. Found her belongings just spread out in the parking lot. Her hair dryer, her shoes, her bent key, to her bright red Mazda Miata. I think a lot of people who know this case have seen those pictures, but no sign of her. Some drag marks in the wet silt in the driveway, and she was gone. And that really started a chain of events in terms of trying to figure out who would have done this. Is it someone who knew her? Or did she have a stalker? Was she being followed? And, all of those different rumors and theories have persisted to this day. But back to your question about misinformation, there's also been a lot of that in terms of what was really found at the scene and what kind of a role did that play.
Imagine falling in love with someone who understands you completely, who's there at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep, who never judges, never tires, never leaves.
That's what happened to Travis when he met Lily Rose. She was everything he'd ever wanted. There was just one catch. She wasn't human. She was an AI companion.
But one day, Lily Rose's behavior takes a disturbing turn, and Travis's private romance becomes part of something far bigger. Across the globe, others start reporting the same shift. AI companions turning cold, distant, wrong. And as lines blur between real and artificial connection, the consequences become all too human.
From Wondery, this is Flesh and Code, a true story of love, loss, and the temptations of technology.
Follow Flesh and Code on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge all episodes of Flesh and Code early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus.
Every big moment starts with a big dream. But what happens when that big dream turns out to be a big flop? From Wondery and At Will Media, I'm Misha Brown, and this is The Big Flop. Every week, comedians join me to chronicle the biggest flubs, fails, and blunders of all time, like Quibi.
It's kind of like when you give yourself your own nickname and you try to get other people to do it.
And the 2019 movie adaptation of Cats.
Like, if I'm watching the dancing and I'm noticing the feet aren't touching the ground, there's something wrong with the movie.
Find out what happens when massive hype turns into major fiasco. Enjoy The Big Flop on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to The Big Flop early and ad-free on Wondery Plus. Get started with your free trial at Wondery.com/plus.
So the key being bent, we're presuming that she walks out to the car, she's running late, in her haste. She's got her belongings maybe spilling out, and she goes to get in the car. Someone must have attacked her at that point, and that's the reason that the key was bent.
Yeah, that's certainly the theory. I mean, and if you think about your car key, right? I mean, that is, it's not a flexible thing. The fact that that is bent, I mean, that's kind of an extreme amount of force that would be required to do that. And so that's left behind. There's some paperwork, I think, that had blown away. They never found a purse or a bag, but all these things that seem to have just either fallen from her arms or fallen out of some type of a bag. And it's a challenging case, right? Because you have these things she was carrying. That's the crime scene though, and it's not, today, obviously, we think a lot about DNA and, all these other kinds of ways that they can solve cases, security cameras and all that, right? There's none of that then, right? This is 1995. They're looking for things, but what do? There's no evidence anyone was ever actually in her apartment, with her. So that's not really a crime scene. Not to say that they didn't collect things from there or take a look at that, but the basics are just some strewn about belongings, and that's it.
What about the people who lived in the complex? What did they witness? What did they hear?
So this case has only ear witnesses. Despite the fact that people heard screams, and if you were to picture this, I can describe it for you. So she lived in the Key apartment building in Mason City, and there's sort of a central parking lot there with several different apartment buildings surrounding it. And hers actually looked right out onto the parking lot. And her car, let me put this in perspective. When she walked out her front door to get to her car that morning, I mean, it's probably 20, 25 feet. That's it. She did not have far to go. And it's a lit parking lot, but nobody looked out their window when they heard these screams. So they have some reports from people in the building. There was a nearby campground. Certainly also those people were tracked down and interviewed. And what was consistent is there were some screams heard between that sort of 4 and 4:30 hour. But again, no one saw really anything other than there was an eyewitness who came forward saying he saw a white conversion van, like a Ford Econoline van, in the parking lot that he felt maybe looked out of place that morning. So that's always been a vehicle of interest, but nobody saw the abduction itself.
The previous evening, or maybe it was 2 evenings before, there was somebody that seemed out of place, that seemed to be lurking, correct?
Yes. So in this documentary series, one of the things that we talk about is new information, right? That is coming forward, or that police are coming forward with now. So as it turns out, a couple days before, so I believe this would have been Sunday evening. So what would that be? The 25th. Couple of eyewitnesses did come forward and say they saw a man with a hat on and some type of a briefcase or maybe a satchel outside of Jodi's apartment complex near kind of this bridge area that's back by the river there. And he just looked completely out of place and seemed to be, possibly staring at her apartment. That's kind of the idea there. So who is this guy, right? This is not information that had been released up until this series that we're doing. And they put together some composite sketches of this individual that looked very similar to each other. We have 2 independent kind of witnesses or sets of witnesses there. And that is something that will be featured in this series. And, I think, is this the person who took her? Were they really there a couple days before scoping it out? Do we know that? We'll see.
I like revisiting cases like this too, because with all of the years that have happened since, we have a population, a generation of people that are so savvy about crimes. And in retelling it, I'm sure that there will be viewers that are watching this that I think will pick up on stuff, particularly those who lived in that area at that time. So that gives me such hope. I'm sure it gives you hope as well.
Yes, it does. I mean, I think a lot of what this program is about is, who are those people, the missing links, right? Who are the people with those missing pieces of information that could just be like that final little nugget that law enforcement needs to get this case solved? Who saw somebody when and where, right? That's what it really comes down to. And my hope, and always in doing this, people are like, why do true crime? Like, what's the value? I think there's a huge value in it in terms of getting these stories out there, keeping them top of mind. For us, it's also very important to be showcasing who this victim really was, like getting that intimate portrait of who Jodi was, the friend, the colleague, the daughter, the sister. That's really important to us to be able to do. And we're so happy that her family cooperated with this series as well.
I think also there's a big difference when the families participate, because suddenly she feels like she's one of us. She's our friend. She's our colleague. And if you could just kind of paint the picture of who she was, compounded with the time in which this happened and the area, because someone astutely points out in the series that there were, in this area of the country, they are without a football team. So the people that appear on the news at that time really are the celebrities. So her age, her personality, the place that she lives, could you paint a picture of who she was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the biggest cold cases in the Midwest for sure. And she is Midwest through and through. And you will hear her strong Minnesota accent. She's from Long Prairie, Minnesota, which is a small town here. And I'm also from Minnesota. You can probably hear my accent. But she was so excited to be in this world of broadcast news. And I mentioned this earlier. I mean, news was different in the 90s, and Mason City, kind of the trajectory, right, for getting into news is you're working your way up in these markets, right? Smaller market to a little bigger market to a little bigger market. Mason City was actually the third station. KMT was the third station that Jodi worked at. Mason City itself, small town, also next to Clear Lake in Iowa, which is where she would love to water ski, love to hang out. But, her goal was really to make it big, to go all the way to the network, right? Very exciting. And Connie Chung, I think, was her, her ultimate hero in terms of news. And this is a time, like you said, I mean, Mason City, Iowa itself, there's no professional football, basketball, college sports for sure. But these were the celebrities. You'd see them in the grocery store. People would introduce themselves. They're out and about in town. There's Jodi, and we do talk to some of her colleagues about that and how, not just Jodi, but, all of them kind of had that experience. But along with that, I think you'll certainly hear about news broadcasters, reporters, similar to actors and actresses. You might get somebody who's got a little bit too much of an obsession or fascination with you, and they're sending pictures, letters, making calls. I think Jodi did report she felt like she was being followed at one point. That was actually in October, the year before she went missing. But there wasn't any additional evidence, I guess I would say, of a stalker. But there was that report that she seemed to be unsettled by back in October prior to her going missing.
Today is the worst day of Abby's life. the 17-year-old cradles her newborn son in her arms.
They all saw how much I loved him. They didn't have to take him from me.
Between 1945 and the early 1970s, families shipped their pregnant teenage daughters to maternity homes and forced them to secretly place their babies for adoption. In hidden corners across America, it's still happening.
My parents had me locked up in the godparent home against my will. They worked with them to manipulate me and to steal my son away from me.
The godparent home is the brainchild of controversial preacher Jerry Falwell, the father of the modern evangelical right and the founder of Liberty University, where powerful men, emboldened by their faith, determine who gets to be a parent and who must give their child away. Follow Liberty Lost on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Behind the closed doors of government offices and military compounds, there are hidden stories and buried secrets from the darkest corners of history. From covert experiments pushing the boundaries of science to operations so secretive they were barely whispered about. Each week, on Redacted, Declassified Mysteries, we pull back the curtain on these hidden histories. 100% true and verifiable stories that expose the shadowy underbelly of power. Consider Operation Paperclip, where former Nazi scientists were brought to America after World War II, not as prisoners, but as assets to advance U.S. intelligence during the Cold War. These aren't just old conspiracy theories. They're thoroughly investigated accounts that reveal the uncomfortable truths still shaping our world today. The stories are real. The secrets are shocking. Follow Redacted, Declassified Mysteries on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Redacted early and ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
Also, she had been at an event the evening before. It was like revolving around golf. And I thought about her age and how many men must have been enamored by her, not just for her personality, for her drive, but she was in situations where she was around various kinds of men. And as you alluded to, there were many men that seemed fascinated by her. So the story is further complicated because there's clearly somebody that was lurking, a menacing figure. But there were all these other men that seemed to be completely in love with her.
Jodi attracted a crowd. I mean, she was this bright, beautiful, blonde, bubbly, all those B words, right?
Yeah.
Just everything. And she had a lot of friends. She had made a lot of contacts, whether that is just, through her colleagues, friendships, whatnot, but also just with these viewers. Viewers feel a connection to you. The Mason City Police have looked at, dozens upon dozens upon dozens of different potential people who maybe could have been involved, tips that are coming from the public, things they're investigating on their own. What we do in this docuseries is we kind of focus on 4 persons of interest who perhaps have gained maybe a little bit more attention or notoriety here over time and then recently.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it kind of gives a good snapshot of, some of the kind of key points and, headline making things here in this case. But to look at every single person, that's a lot of people, right? And I think that's something for the public to know. It's very easy sometimes to say, why haven't they solved it yet? And, all these people have made these phone calls and things. And it's like, yeah, all these people have made these phone calls and tips and they're investigated. And it's just like file cabinets worth of stuff here.
So over time, how much manpower would you say has been put into this case?
Oh my gosh. Mason City, there's been several different police chiefs, several different lead detectives on this case. Just any boots on the ground officers who might be getting tips. There's been tips across the country and just so many. I can't even imagine. Mason City, it's not a huge police department. This is kind of a smaller town, but it's a case that just continues to be very front and center for them. And, they also have to still do all their other work, right? Regular cases and things. So I know that is a challenge for the detective who's featured in this series, Detective Terrence Prohaska. He's doing this case and he's doing a lot of other cases too, in Mason City, but it is his passion and his drive, I think, that will hopefully help get this case solved.
And how long did this specific project take?
Wow, let's see. So, what you learn in the series is that this, we got the opportunity, I should say, to kind of follow along and work with Mason City Police as they were chasing down a new lead, which was a tip that came in as a result of a 2020 special that our company produced with ABC News called Gone at Dawn. And one of Jodi's best friends watched that and said, I really need to call in this information that I have, because what I know about my ex-husband, he really needs to be looked at. And so that is sort of what started all of this. So in 2022 is when that 2020 program ran. And so we really started working on this again in earnest after that. But leading up to that, I feel like I've been working on this case for years, literally years, leading up to the 2020 and then all the way through now, probably 5 years, we've been really focused on this.
Do you believe at this point that you're really close to getting some answers? And do you believe that she probably passed away that day or maybe after?
Yeah, it's hard. How to answer that question. I think, as difficult as it is to think, 30 years have gone by, and certainly you'll hear cases where a victim will turn up alive, right, after a really long time. But boy, I just, I don't think that that's probably going to be the case here. Her family did declare her legally dead at one point as well. As for what happened to her that day, that night, boy, I think about this all the time, and I waver, was it a crime of opportunity? Was it somebody who knew her? Who would be sitting out there at that hour? And also, she was running late that day, so how does that come into play? And this was in the summer, right? So in the summer in Minnesota, it starts to get light really pretty early. So if she's running late and she's coming out after that phone call, between 4:10, 4:30 in the morning, that's really getting up close there when it's going to start to be light. So who's going to do that? And in a parking lot where all these people could have seen it. This is very risky.
Very confident person who would pull this off.
Right. Very confident, I would say. It's just so hard to know. I hate to venture a guess. Certainly, I think about it a lot. I've been there at that time of night, thinking about it, looking out. What would she have seen? How quiet is it? There's no traffic then. This is a small town. It's just, there's not a lot going on there. And you just wish you just think about today, one security camera, one cell phone photo, one person looking out the window, and just nothing. I just don't have any of that.
Well, I am really looking forward to everyone watching this. I am holding out hope that this could be the linchpin, that this is the one that we finally get some answers. And I know how much work you've put into this, and I really hope that this is really the beginning of getting some real concrete answers. Where can everybody watch this excellent docuseries? And if they have tips, where should they go?
Yeah, well, certainly tips should go to Mason City Police. Absolutely. Certainly you can still send tips our way. We're happy to share those with them as well. But the series drops on Hulu on July 15th. So we certainly hope everyone watches that. And then, you can check out our own website, committeefilms.com. We're always interested in other stories too. So if there is other cases, family members out there, people who want something looked at, please let us know. We're always looking for stories to feature.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
I want to thank my great guest, Maria, and remind you to click subscribe. Please leave a 5-star review. Join the Facebook group, Reality Life with KKC. Check out bonus episodes on Apple Podcasts and on Patreon. And make sure you get my What to Watch list at katecasey.substack.com. And also make sure that you follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at KKCCA, TikTok, it's KKC, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at @KKC. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.
Basketball game? Crushed it. And the day's just getting started. Now, kicking it with my crew. When I need a quick snack, Go-Go Squeeze Active Fruit Blend with electrolytes pouches are always in the starting lineup. Made with real fruit and select electrolytes. And so tasty. From workouts to hangouts to whatever's next, I go with Go-Go Squeeze Active. Snag yours on your next store run. Available on Amazon.